Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack the incredibly exciting events of Moana 2. Beneath all the vibrant animation and the epic high seas adventure, this story reveals a deeply resonant message about why we fundamentally need each other. So we're going to look really closely at how this entire narrative explores the true meaning behind connection.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to think for a second about the very real-world feeling of disconnection. We've all felt it, right? That heavy sense of being cut off from the people around us. And in this story, we're hit right away with a chilling truth. Isolation makes them weaker. In the world of Moana 2, this isn't just a metaphor or a passing feeling. The central villain of this story uses isolation as a literal weapon against the people of Oceania.
And that villain is Nalo, an absolutely massive, powerful storm god. But what makes Nalo so terrifying isn't just his size, it's his specific motivation. He deliberately sank the legendary island of Motufetu. Why? Because Motufetu was the island that once connected all the people of the ocean. It was the hub. By sinking it, Nalo kept the communities scattered. So he isn't just some giant physical monster to be defeated. Nalo is the physical embodiment of isolation itself. And honestly, that is what creates the massive existential stakes for our hero.
A divided Oceania, the call to reconnect. We're picking up the story exactly 3 years after the events of the first movie, and well, a lot has changed, but a whole lot has stubbornly stayed exactly the same.
Moana herself has grown up quite a bit. She's become a seasoned, experienced wayfinder, and she literally spends her time actively exploring the vast ocean, desperately searching for other people and other islands. But despite all of her efforts, she discovers that her entire world, the different communities of Oceania, remains entirely fractured. Everyone is completely separated from one another. She's out there putting in the work for sure, but the disconnection is deeply, deeply rooted.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the stakes elevate from a personal quest to a literal matter of survival. Moana receives a vision from her ancestor, Tautaivasa, laying out a pretty harsh truth. Motufetu wasn't just any island. It was the legendary connecting point for everyone. And because Nalo deliberately sank it, Moana's people are facing an existential threat. Her ancestor makes it crystal clear, unless Motufetu is restored, her people and their entire culture could just vanish entirely.
The new voyage begins, building a community. Facing the potential erasure of her people, Moana decides to answer the call, but she definitely cannot do it alone.
Answering this massive call means Moana first has to build a community of her own. We've got Lodo, who is just a brilliant engineer, Mani, a dedicated storyteller, and actually a massive Moana fanboy, Kele, a very reluctant farmer, and of course, Pua and the ever-clueless Heihei are along for the ride. Gathering these wildly diverse, uniquely talented individuals is Moana's very first practical step toward defeating isolation. She is literally forming a connection right there on her boat.
But, every journey has a cost. To follow this path toward Motufetu, Moana has to leave her family behind, including her younger sister, Simea. I want to just pause here for a second to really ground this story emotionally. Think about the massive personal sacrifice required here. In order to reconnect the world, she has to momentarily disconnect from the people she loves the absolute most. It's an incredibly heavy burden for a leader to carry.
Battling the storm god, Maui's parallel path. Let's see how this builds, because Moana actually isn't the only one taking on this monumental task.
We have a familiar face tackling the exact same problem, just from a completely different angle. Maui is also searching for Motufetu, specifically because he wants to challenge Nalo directly. But things go sideways when he's captured by Nalo's mysterious enforcer, Matange. Yet, in a twist that perfectly highlights our core theme, she eventually helps him escape. Why? Because she also wants freedom from Nalo's control. Even the villain's own enforcer is sick of the storm god's isolating grip.
So after several incredibly dangerous encounters, these two parallel paths converge. Moana, her new crew, and Maui are finally reunited. But their reunion happens right at the edge of an enormous storm surrounding Motufetu, and this is where they realize just how tough their mission truly is. Nala's power has created this seemingly impenetrable barrier, preventing anyone from easily reaching the sunken island. The ultimate test of their connection is sitting right in front of them.
The ultimate sacrifice, the cost of connection. The gravity of what happens next literally cannot be overstated.
Let's look at the sheer chaos of this final battle. Every single attempt to connect is met with devastating resistance. Maui uses his magical hook and manages to start pulling Motufetu toward the surface. He is so close, but bam! Nalo violently strikes him with lightning, completely stripping away his demigod powers. Seeing Maui fall, Moana realizes the only way to break the curse is to reach the island herself. She dives into those dangerous, churning depths and actually manages to touch Motufetu, and then Nalo's lightning strikes Moana.
So the crucial point is exactly this devastating twist. Moana actually dies during the final battle. I'm just going to let that massive twist hang in the air for a second. The hero of our story is killed. The film boldly shows us that true connection, breaking the ultimate curse of isolation, required the absolute ultimate sacrifice.
Rising from the depths, transformation. But of course, the story does not end in tragedy.
We now see the powerful, triumphant resolution of this narrative, because connection is literally what saves the day here. First, Maui flat out refuses to accept her death. Then, the ultimate connection to the past happens. Moana's ancestors, including the beloved Grandma Tala, intervene. Through the combined love and connection of her friends in the present and her ancestors from the past, Moana is brought back to life. In the process, Maui gets his powers back, and finally together they raise Motufetu and shatter Nalo's curse, at long last reconnecting the scattered peoples of Oceania.
The aftermath of this twist is just profound. Moana went into this battle as a human wayfinder, right? But through her sacrifice and resurrection, she is brought back, fundamentally transformed into something much greater, a demigoddess and an even more powerful wayfinder. By giving literally everything to connect her people, she transcended her ordinary human limit.
The power of connection, the underlying story. Let's pull back from the fantasy plot for a moment and look at what this entire journey was actually about.
And this brilliantly illustrates the delicate balancing act of growing up. On one hand, Moana holds this deep love for her home and family. Remember, she had to leave her sister Samia behind. But on the other, she holds a massive responsibility to explore the unknown and help others. Moana 2 is fundamentally about this tension. Her mission was never just about saving a piece of rock in the ocean. It was always about reconnecting families, cultures, and communities. Because, as we established right at the beginning, isolation makes us weaker.
Which leads to the ultimate victory. With the curse broken and Motufetu restored, the movie ends with Moana returning home. But she isn't returning to an isolated island anymore. She returns to lead a massive gathering of voyagers. We finally get to see a thriving, reconnected community of families and cultures that are no longer weakened by the storm god's isolation. Connection won.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer. But before we go, I want to leave you with a question directly inspired by Moana's journey. How will you bridge the disconnected islands in your own life? We might not be fighting literal storm gods, but we all face forces that try to keep us isolated from one another. Think about how you can be a wayfinder in your own community. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll see you in the next explainer.